Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Morgan Dickerson. I am the program manager of the business advising program here at Pacific Community Ventures. On behalf of the entire business advising team, we are so excited to be launching this new series of webinars called Ask Me Anything, Expert Office Hours. So this will be the first of hopefully many amazing webinars and offerings. It'll be a kind of an open Q&A session with one of our amazing expert volunteer advisors on their area of expertise. And we want this to be available to you all to ask kind of those one-off questions and those individualized questions on topics that may not be your main top priority, but obviously are important to your business. So we're going to have an assortment of different topics in the coming months for you to get that information on a variety of different topics without having to commit to a full-on partnership, because we know those are time-consuming, the work that you do with your PCV advisors. If you're if you're an advisor on the call, interested in hosting an AMA session with us in the future, please reach out to me. I'll have my contact information at the end of the slide and share out an email at the end of the presentation, either later today or tomorrow. Or if you're an entrepreneur on the line who would like to recommend a future topic, again, reach out to me. We'd love to hear, what areas of business you guys are interested in learning more about through these Ask Me Anything sessions. So I'm going to get started just with a quick overview of what Pacific Community Ventures is, for those of you who may not be very familiar with us. So we are a nonprofit dedicated to the support and success of small businesses. And we empower small business owners, and we help investors make investments that create shared prosperity and sustainable communities through our Good Jobs, Good Business model. Our mission is to invest in small businesses, create good jobs for working people, and make markets work for social good, which we're able to achieve through our affordable lending program, our business advising program, which a lot of you are familiar with, where we provide free mentorship and advising to entrepreneurs, and also through our social impact measurement and management program. So to get started with our first Ask Me Anything session, I would like to introduce Kyle Roseman. He is a small business advisor at NorCal SBDC Finance Center, specializing in financial support services and helping small business owners source and access the capital they need. He's been an advisor with PCV for just a few months now. He joined kind of right at the start of the COVID crisis, recognizing the need and the need for help and the importance of supporting small businesses through this time. And he's already helped multiple entrepreneurs through our program with their financial planning. So Kyle has prepared a brief presentation where he will go through some of these topics that he is an expert on, kind of providing the context to these topics, as well as answering hopefully answering some of your kind of generic questions. But we'll have pauses throughout the presentation where, we will answer your questions. So just a few logistical notes. To ask your questions, please use the chat feature in Zoom, as well as the commenting feature in Facebook. I've got my team monitoring the Facebook questions that come in. And send those in at any point throughout the entire presentation. We'll make sure we'll address them either real time as they apply or in those pauses for questions throughout the presentation. If you have any questions or need any technical assistance, feel free to chat in that as well, and my team will help monitor that. So without further ado, Kyle, thank you so much for being here.
Awesome.
Good.
Thanks, Morgan. I appreciate it. It's good to be here. So just kind of a basic overview before we jump into things. First, I just want to give a quick update on all the disaster funding that's going on, EIDL and the Paycheck Protection Program. And then I'm going to talk more about banking relationships, small business lending, kind of in general. I wanted to go into a little bit about my background because kind of the cool aspect of working with Pacific Community Ventures or the Small Business Development Center is there's all these different advisors who have unique backgrounds. I mean, everybody has a unique background and it all plays into, the services that they're able to provide. And so I think that's important for this conversation, and I think it'll bring up some pretty strong points and hopefully raise some ideas for some of the entrepreneurs that we're speaking to this morning. So you can go to the next slide. Or can I? Yeah, I guess you're controlling it. Okay, so the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is open again. It's been open for a little while, since June 15th. And the way it works is it's a pretty simple application. You can apply there at covid19relief.sba.gov/# whatever. And if you can't copy that link, I mean, basically you can just Google SBA EIDL and it'll come up. Look for that link.
And just one note on that, we'll share the slides after the presentation, either today or tomorrow. So you all will have access to this link directly through the presentation as well.
Sweet. So this program is a lot easier to apply for than the payroll protection program. I know we're kind of late into the whole funding process. There are still some people I know out there who haven't applied for any of these. I was working with a friend yesterday to get him moving forward. And he's a sole proprietor, so his payroll records aren't like very accommodating to apply for the PPP. So for him, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is going to be a lot easier. And the way it works, this loan is over 30 years. There's a 12-month deferral period where you don't make a single payment, and it's 3.75%. So it's the cheapest working capital you'll ever be able to get for your business. It's a low interest rate, and it's expanded over such a long period of time that your payments every month are really low. And it is there to help ease the troubles arising from coronavirus. So you can go to the next one. If you have already applied and you are denied for whatever reason, there could be multiple reasons. We can help you at the Finance Center, at the Small Business Development Center. I worked on an appeal last week for somebody who owns a yoga studio. Their gross revenue was somewhere around $800,000 to $900,000 a year, and for whatever reason, they got denied. They've been in business for 10 years, and they got denied. So we worked with them, and actually relatively quickly, like I think we sent in the appeal on Friday, and like on Monday or Tuesday, she was approved for a significant amount. And so these are the things that we need from you if we want to work your appeal. We're going to need the denial letter, your application number, and then your 2019 tax return. If you don't have your 2019 tax return, send us your 2018. Hopefully they're similar. But yeah, that's what we need basically. And there is an appeal process. So I wanted to touch on that, and you can move to the next slide. So the Paycheck Protection Program is open now until August 8th. It opened back up on the 6th of July. So this week. It was supposed to close at the end of June, but there's still like 100 billion, I think, left in the fund, in that pool of money that's dedicated to the Paycheck Protection Program. So there's a lot of money left, and they extended it another month. Also, they've changed the rules a little bit. So, I mean, this happened. Anybody who was approved after June 5th now works these sets of rules, which is the covered period, which used to be 8 weeks. The covered period meaning the time in which you have to spend all the money, because you have to spend it within a certain period of time, has now extended from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. There is a 10-month deferral period, which happens, that period begins after the covered period. So for somebody who has a 24-week covered period, they get the funds deposited into their account, and then they have 6 months, 24 weeks to spend it, and then there's 10 months deferral. So there's really like 16 months of not making payments and having this money. And so then the forgiveness application is not due until October 2021. This is a big deal because what we've seen since March is a lot of chaos in the industry, a lot of change. Just EIDL came on, and then Paycheck Protection came on, and then they shut down, and then they came back, and so and everybody in the industry was like racing to help and get things going, and business owners are like frantically running around. And so we have all this deferral time. So it's kind of time to pump on the brakes a little bit and take it easy and just really prepare for the forgiveness process. So I just wanted to make a strong point that the forgiveness applications, according to the SBA guidelines, are not due until October 2021. Any amount that is left over that you have to pay off will be paid off over 5 years at 2%. So again, it's favorable rates going on, and this is definitely to help through the pandemic. So next slide. There's a couple income caps, and this is how it works. So for the 8-week covered period, basically anybody, if it's an owner or if it's an employee, they're not allowed to be compensated more than $15,385 for that 8-week period. That's the income cap. And so for the 24-week covered period, it's a little bit more. So they allow people to take the full 2.5 months, which is basically what we apply for. And so for an owner or sole proprietor, if they applied for 2.5 months of income or payroll, then they can actually just take the full 2.5 months as payroll. So it's again capped at $20,833 for any owner, self-employed person, or general partner. Now there's a difference with a W-2 employee. So for an employee, they can actually, their wages are forgiven for the entire 24-week period. So their cap is $46,000, just over $46,000. And of course, we kind of still have to see how it all plays out with the full-time equivalency requirement, and because people are still just applying for that 2.5 months of payroll costs. So basically what they're saying here by this forgivable compensation for employees at $46,000 is basically like this money is used to pay your employees. So like if you pay your employees, it's good. And if you have a 24-week covered period and you spend it all on paying your employees, it's forgivable. That's really what this program is for, to save jobs and to keep people on payroll. So next slide. I'm kind of going fairly fast, and I wanted to remind everybody or let people know if they didn't know that the Finance Center does do webinars Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they kind of do a similar thing that we're doing, where it's like basically an hour and a half of answering questions. And there's an SBA representative, I think maybe 2 of them that show up. So I'm maybe going a little bit fast here, but we can address any questions after this section here on the disaster funds, but I did want to kind of bring that up. So applying for forgiveness. Again, it's not due until October 2021. So I have a lot of people who are really anxious to apply for forgiveness. They want this whole thing to be done, and the truth is, like, we have time to breathe right now. And so what I'm helping people do is just make sure they put together a thorough package for forgiveness so that they can maximize forgiveness. There's no reason to rush this, basically. Payments aren't even due for 10 months. And if you do start making payments and then you apply for forgiveness later and you get forgiven, they will return your payments. So there's a lot of leeway. It's like really the Paycheck Protection Program is set up to help businesses, and they really crossed their T's and dotted their I's. So my message strongly is prepare now and apply later. I have heard of some lenders accepting forgiveness applications, and I know that there's quite a bit who haven't even started yet. So again, I think now is a good time for businesses to kind of focus on how they're going to adapt and change their operations to accommodate COVID, and kind of not really worry so much about this stuff anymore. We do want to make sure that we're putting together a thorough forgiveness package, but really there's a lot more that we have to focus on. How are we going to continue to operate, I think, is a big one. So next slide. So the forgiveness package, this is what it looks like. Of the total money you got from the Paycheck Protection Program, these are the requirements. At least 60% of it needs to go to payroll, and up to 40% of it can go to other expenses. If you use 100% of it to go to payroll, it'll be forgiven. That's the intention, is for this to go towards payroll. And at a minimum of it, 60%. So in order to put together the forgiveness package, we want to put together all of our records. And this is kind of going to vary lender by lender. But one thing to keep in mind is if we are going to apply 4 months, 6 months, 8 months down the road, it's good to kind of collect all your records, organize it, and get it set up so that we can successfully apply further down the road. So what we're going to be looking for is basically payroll records or receipts, rent receipts or invoices, your utility bills. And if you do have a mortgage that you're paying interest on and you're going to write that off as a forgivable expense, then we're going to want to include, a receipt of that. Or if you have, equipment loans and you're going to write off the interest portion on that, we can include that in the package too. But basically all it is just document, whatever you're using the money for, just keep a record. Okay, next slide. And so this is a spreadsheet. These are all over the place. And actually I have one of these, and Morgan, I forgot to send it to you this morning. But I was thinking, if possible, maybe we can get this out on an email. It's really simple. Basically, this is kind of a mock-up, but I have this in Excel. And this first column here under expenses is just kind of a description. So we'll just put this is for the month of May. So May rent, and then the first payroll period, and the second payroll period, and then May utilities. And then in this green color-coded area, what it's doing is it's breaking down these expenses into the four areas. So there's payroll, there's mortgage interest, there's rent or lease payments, and there's utilities. And so then what you can see is at the very bottom under percentages, it all breaks down. And the Excel document that I have, it's expanded a little bit more. I just broke this down into like 1 month so I could fit it on the slide. But basically what you're seeing here, May payroll is a total of $8,000. So this person would have applied for 20. So up there under the PPP amount, we put 20. When you enter it in, you're going to enter it in as a negative amount because we're going to look at it as a liability. So then you enter it in up in that little spot right there under the PPP amount, and it takes it over to the total. And then as you enter in all your data, it starts subtracting it. So the first one right there is May rent, 2,000. So you can see it brings your total amount left over to 18,000. The next one is payroll, 4,000. And so it's tracking all that. And at the bottom, right here where it says 10,300, that's what's left over. So I only did 1 month right here. But what you can see is in that first month, they spent 10,300. And so by month 2, they would have spent all the money. And if it's the same, I mean, these numbers are like super simple. And actually, probably in most cases, most businesses are relatively simple. But what you'll see here is this person would get forgiveness. You know, they have almost 80% going to payroll, and they have 22% going to some of those other forgivable expenses. Okay. So yeah, we ran through that all pretty quick. So if there's any questions, we can run through it. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly where everybody's at with it. So yeah. Fire away.
Why don't we have folks on the call and on Facebook, if you want to kind of comment in your situation, you know, where you are at the process, if you need help with any step of the process, submit your questions through that chat feature. And we did have a couple come in. One was around, you know, what tricks can I do to stay organized and to keep all of this, you know, organized. And I think that spreadsheet will be really helpful for that. And Kyle, if you send it over to me, I can make sure everybody on the phone gets that information, gets that template. But are there any other tricks that you have for keeping it all organized?
So, I mean, one thing to kind of go over it a little bit more, you know, the way that I'm putting some of these forgiveness packages together, and, you know, the requirements might change from lender to lender, but basically it's the same thing. You know, I think of it as a hard copy. So page 1 is going to be that spreadsheet. And then everything under it is going to be all the supporting documentation. So if you can maybe go back one to the spreadsheet. So we have our spreadsheet, we print it out, it's 1-page document, and it's kind of the cover, right? And then behind it, we have all the sort of documentation. So an invoice for rent or a receipt of that payment would go there. And you can either organize it in a couple different ways, whatever makes sense to you or whatever the lender asks. You can either organize it by date or by category. What I mean by that is, you know, we want to send them an organized packet of documents. And so page 1 is this spreadsheet. Page 2 is, you know, whatever way we want to organize these expenses. So we can do payroll for those 2 months or the 24-week period if that's what you're doing. And then we can kind of, you can either categorize it by type of expense or by date. It really doesn't matter. I mean, and a lot of that has to do with working with your lender. And a lot of this, organizing this, is to give the business owner 100% clarity on how they used the money. so that when they're having a conversation with the lender, when they're filling out the forgiveness application, they know exactly all their information and they have it right there. They're like fully clear on it. That's the biggest thing, because when you're clear on how you use the money, you can navigate the process. It's pretty simple. Where it gets complicated is when we're like, oh, I don't really remember how I spent the money. Oh, I lost that receipt. Oh, I didn't really keep payroll records. Or, you know, that's when things start to get really complicated. But when you have all your documentation and when you know exactly what it is that you did, it's really not very hard. It's pretty simple, actually. It's just bureaucratic. You know, it's just paperwork. Finance is like that. That's what it is. So.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess the key trick and tip is just to be organized in whatever system works best for you and the lender that you're working with. Awesome. We have another question about the EIDL loan, the EIDL loan. Can that loan be used toward paying off long-term bank loan, so more than 1 year?
Right. I think I remember this question. I don't know if it came up in another presentation or maybe you emailed me this.
Yes, this was one that came in before.
Okay, cool. So we would want to take a stronger look at the actual situation and see what's going on. I mean, first of all, a big thing that comes into play is how much money they received from the EIDL, because there's certain things that revolve around that as far as personal guarantee or collateral requirement. So if, for example, somebody wanted to consolidate their business debt through the EIDL, what they would want to do is basically, and if that business was to get audited by the SBA, and the SBA, for whatever reason, was like, we don't think that this was an appropriate use of the disaster funds, what the business owner is going to do is just make a case that says, hey, this was the decision I made, and due to the situation that I was in. So I had, X amount in credit card debt, and I had maybe a pretty bad loan that I used to finance something that was at like 13% maybe, or whatever it is. And so I consolidated that into the EIDL so that it would bring my monthly obligations down and it would give me some relief on my cash flow. And therefore I was able to get through the pandemic because my bills went from up here to down here and I could manage it. And I wasn't able to manage it because I had a drop in revenue. I wasn't able to make my payments, so I consolidated that debt. And then I was able to manage with less revenue. That would be a completely fair argument, and there wouldn't be any sort of trouble there.
Awesome. Thank you. We have another question that just came in. Sonja asks, can I use 100% on payroll if I'm a sole proprietor? If applied before June, can I still use money over the 24-week period?
So the 24-week period depends on when she received the money. So anybody who, forget if it was either approved for or received the money after June 5th, they're automatically on the 24-week period. Anybody before that, they have the option to ask their lender to be put on the 24-week period. So that conversation needs to happen between her and the lender. And then as far as using 100% payroll, she's a sole prop. So I would again have to look a little bit more into her specific case. And I mean, she did get approved for it. So that's a good sign. So usually the hardest thing for sole props is getting approved, because draws, which a lot of sole props, that's how they pay themselves, is through a draw, aren't actually used in the payroll calculation. And that made it hard to apply. But now that you have the money, you can claim that as payroll, and you can pay yourself proper wages, and you can get that forgiven. So, I mean, the short answer is yes, you should be able to get all that forgiven. But in order to really dive into it, you're probably going to need to take a look at the case.
Okay. And Sonja, if you have any follow-ups based off of that, feel free to type those in as well, and we can get a little bit more clarity for you, Kyle.
Definitely.
While we're waiting for that, we can move on to another question. So we have a user saying, I own 100% in an S Corp and haven't applied for PPP yet. Do the same 60-40 payroll other expenses split forgiveness requirements qualify? Also in 2018, I only had 1099 contractors and didn't pay anyone, including myself, on a W-2, nor have I taken anything out as an owner draw. Had to file an extension on 2019, so I only have estimates. Can I qualify for a PPP still?
So there's no hurt in applying for it. And I'm not supposed to tell anybody not to apply. So because you might be able to. I'd have to look at, I mean, the one thing that's missing from that question is, how did he pay himself? Did he say that? Is that?
So not
No,
on
I
the
see it
W-2. If whoever asked that question, if you want to clarify that for us through the chat or Q&A feature.
So what they're saying here is, I only had 1099 contractors, so they would not be included in your payroll calculation. They would actually apply for themselves. And then I didn't pay myself, nor have I taken anything out as an owner draw. So it doesn't sound like, okay, I didn't pay myself at all. I lived off spousal income. So yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't sound like you had any payroll at that point then. So the 1099 folks, they apply for themselves. And then, so I would recommend that you apply for EIDL, and that this person applies for the EIDL, because that's based off of revenue and cost of goods sold. Whereas payroll protection is based off of payroll, and so they're really looking at wages. And since that didn't really happen in this business, it doesn't sound like they can apply.
Okay. We have another question from Talia regarding the EIDL. I'm a self-employed freelance designer. In 2019, I made very low income due to family caregiving. Would I still qualify for EIDL? Is there a salary minimum?
There is no salary minimum for EIDL, and I would 100% go for it. Yeah. Definitely apply for EIDL. And the person before, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, they should also definitely apply for EIDL. If I did say that, I want to reemphasize it. Everybody should apply for EIDL.
Great. Do we have any other questions on PPP and EIDL? Another one that came to us before before today was, do you have any information about funding the programs in Canada? So we do have some small business owners that are Canadian. If I'm knowing that you work in the US, if you don't have anything off the top of your head now, if there are any resources that we can share with them after the fact, or
so I don't know about any of the Canadian pandemic disaster relief stuff. I actually have no idea. But further along in the presentation, we're going to be talking about everyday business relationships, banking relationships, and business underwriting. And when it comes to that stuff, I could probably help them.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that's the same. Numbers are the same. I was watching this movie about these people it was a new movie on Amazon, and they were making contact with aliens. And I was like, numbers are the same, even like in another planet. And so,
in outer space.
Even in Canada, numbers are still the same. So.
Okay, we have another question that came in saying, does EIDL check your credit?
I think it does. Yeah.
Okay. If a subsidiary company received EIDL, can the parent company also apply for a separate EIDL loan?
That's hard to answer with limited information, but I would say to go for it and just apply. It kind of depends, but there's no real harm in going for it and applying. So it really depends on what's happening there. So,
are there any specific, situations that the answer would be yes or no?
Well,
you can give some context too.
I know that, at least in the beginning, people who owned multiple businesses that were each held within an LLC separately kind of applied all together. So those would kind of be subsidiary. And then sometimes what we see with real estate developers who own multiple properties, it's like each property is held within an LLC. And then those LLCs are held by a holding company, which is a C corporation. It gets complicated. I would probably have to talk to that person about what's going on there.
But apply just in case it's a yes.
Yeah. I mean, it also, I think, depends on the ownership. It depends probably on the ownership too. I don't really have a strong answer for that one, but yeah, go for it and apply. There's no real harm in it.
Okay. Regarding applying to the EIDL, is it best to apply after 2019 taxes are filed?
File as soon as you can.
Yep, this person said they're filing this week.
Yeah, don't hesitate. Just go for it.
Okay. If I applied for EIDL, was denied because of credit score, appealed asking about the $1,000 grant, was told SBA is reconsidering their decision, and asked for my banking info, should I get the loan?
Where is that question? Is that
it's in the Q&A at the end.
Q&A?
Yes.
Because it's credit score. I was asking about $1,000 grant. I was told SBA. Should I get the loan? Should I get the loan? If you mean like they offered you a loan and you're sitting there wondering if you should take it, I don't see why you wouldn't. I can't necessarily make that decision for you. You have to make it on your own. If you're asking, should I give them my banking information? If you're interested in taking the loan, yes, you should give them your banking information. Depending on, I mean, if you're only trying to get that $1,000 grant, whatever. But if you're looking for more and you're denied because of credit score and you want to work on that credit score and try and reapply, depending on how much you're looking for and what your situation is, I would recommend that you either work with an advisor, probably at the Small Business Development Center, possibly through Pacific Community Ventures. I'm not sure if you guys have an advisor who specializes in credit score. I think we do at my office. There's like 50 of us, so I'm pretty sure somebody can help. So yeah, that's not necessarily a very clear answer, but if you got offered a loan and you want to know whether or not you should take it, that's kind of your choice. And if you want to know if you should follow through, I would probably give them your banking information if you are interested. You know, just go for it. So I'm thinking about moving forward, unless we have any more questions. Do we have this one?
Just clarification from that last one is they were asking about,
should I get the $1,000 grant? So I think there's a difference between will I get the $1,000 grant and should I get the $1,000 grant? Should you, if you're offered, should you, they don't really give you they don't really ask. They just put it in your account if you get it. The grants are kind of, they're not going out as abundantly as they were to begin with. Now with a lot of the other programs that came out, I'm not sure if that's why, but I've worked with a lot of people who just wanted the $1,000 grant and then got offered a $1,000 loan. And I don't know, I probably would have to have a one-off with this person, but I don't exactly know what they're trying to achieve. So yeah, sorry.
I think they're getting at, you know, whether or not they'll
be approved for it.
Yeah. So she was told everybody should get grant, whether approved or denied.
This is true. Yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of people who didn't get the forgivable advance also. And I think now that the SBA is catching up with everything, they're a little bit more stringent on it. And there's a little bit more certainty with everything that's going on out there. There's pandemic unemployment assistance. And there's a lot. So I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily count on it. And if you get it, good for you. I don't know if you can appeal not getting the advance.
That looks like all the questions we have right now. Anyone want to have any last questions on the PPP EIDL before we move on? Just give it a few seconds. And just time check. I know we're coming up to our hour, Kyle. So just
we are.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's move forward because I got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Okay, here we
So
go.
we'll just like run through it as much as we can. So this is basically me. My career started off with the Santa Cruz Financial Academy, and that's where I was helping people kind of identify a certain financial model that helps build household success. And through that, I became interested in more complicated systems, and I wanted to work in the small business arena. And so through that, Keenly was born. So those are my two babies right there. And then Keenly, I'm able to work as an affiliate advisor through Finance Center. And so I can bring a lot of my service, pretty much all my services, to small businesses at no cost. And Pacific Community Ventures has been great because they're putting me in touch with more business owners, and we get to do a lot of problem solving, and we get to do a lot of really cool stuff. So let's move forward. I think since we're running short on time, I'm going to run through this stuff probably too quickly, but I'm just going to go for it. So this is it. This is what I call the living credit system. This was the system that I built for household success. It combines basically the three elements of lending. There's loans, there's credit lines, and there's credit cards. And each one has a specific structure, and really from that we can see that each one has a specific use. Next slide. So loans are basically, money that's handed to you. There's agreed upon terms, and you pay it back over a certain period of time. What we're looking at right here is a mortgage. So this is a 30-year loan. And in the very beginning, we're looking at, this is the principal interest ratio. So within a payment, there's a certain amount of principal and there's a certain amount of interest. For some people, this is common knowledge. For others, they never really thought about it too much. But what we're looking at is basically the first 17 years, the majority of payments are towards interest. The majority of that amount goes towards paying off the interest. And what this is a sign of is basically when a bank lends you money, they receive all their interest up front, and then they slowly kind of release their grip on whatever it is they're lending on. In this case, it's a house. So this is one type of lending. And let's move forward. A credit line, on the other hand, is basically a chunk of money. So let's say there's a personal credit line. Personal credit line might look something like, okay, you have $10,000, and we're going to charge you interest based on the amount of time that you use it. So let's say there's a credit line and it's charging 12%. That means that it's charging you 1 point every month. So annually, it's 12%. So that's 1 point a month. So let's say you were to borrow $1,000 from your line for 1 month. You're going to pay about $10 in interest. The cool thing about credit lines is it's basically cash on demand, cash that's available, and you don't pay for it unless you use it. And it's kind of just there for you to use on demand. So there's this characteristic about it that is very liquid. So as soon as you put money into it, it's available. As soon as you take it out, you have a balance. And it can do this thing where you're paying it off, taking money out, paying it off, taking money out. It's kind of meant for that. Let's move forward. And then this is a credit card. So credit cards have a 30-day billing period. And in that 30 days, you accumulate expenses, and then you have a balance. And then they send you a statement, and you have to pay off that statement. So there's a grace period. If you pay off your statement, that whole balance, by the end of the grace period, which is called the due date, you don't pay any interest at all. If, however, you only pay half of your statement balance, you pay the full interest. So for a credit card, let's say it's 24%. That means you're paying 2 points a month. So if you used $1,000, they send you a statement that says you owe us $1,000, and at the end of the grace period or on the due date, you pay off 500. You're still going to pay all the interest on that $1,000 because you either pay in full or you pay interest. So 2% on $1,000 would be 20 bucks. So you pay $500 and you still have $500 left to pay off. You're going to end up paying the full $20. Let's move forward. So the benefit of a credit card is that there's a float. And what happens is you get to make an expense and you can float it into the future. So if you don't have the cash flow right now, if you don't have the cash at all, you can use it to make an expense and you can float it into the future. Yesterday I had somebody who's a small business, very small business. She's like selling makeup and eyelashes and stuff like that. And I asked her like how much she needed. She was like, I need 30 bucks. And I was like, what? You need 30 bucks? This is keeping you up at night? You need 30 bucks? And like, how much are you gonna make? She's like, yeah, if I get 30 bucks, I have this person, they're gonna buy it. I'm gonna make, I'll turn around and make 70. And she doesn't have a credit card. And I was just like, what are you doing with your life? Because look at this. She could invest in her inventory the first 10 days of her billing period, and then she would be able to float those expenses until her due date. And if she pays off her expense on the due date, she got free financing for that period of time. So if she has a quick turnover and she's purchasing inventory 1 week and getting rid of it within 2 weeks, credit cards are a great way to finance that type of activity. That's not like a small business, that's like a micro business. It's like super tiny. But I've had other people who are in the same situation. One guy was looking for $1,000. He was trying to apply for EIDL to get the forgivable advance. And I was like, man, you're making this way more complicated than it needs to be. He didn't have a credit card either. And I was like, and I said to him, look, there's all these credit cards out there that have 0% interest for the first 18 months. And you're trying to start your business with $1,000. Apply for one of those cards. Not everybody wants to do credit cards. They're not always the right way. Sometimes they make sense. Let's move forward. Okay, so how does all this
I just
work
want to do
out?
a time check for you, Kyle. We've only got about 5 minutes left
Okay,
here.
we got 5 minutes. Okay.
So if there's anything you want to skip over or highlight here.
So yeah, we should skip through, boy. Okay. Basically what I'm showing here, and we don't have time to discuss it, is that all three of these elements do combine into one system. And you can pay off debt quicker, you can save money. This is a model that's rooted in efficiency. And it's unfortunately it's more than a 5-minute conversation. So we'll probably have to come back to this at some other time. But let's move forward. We're gonna have to flip through a lot of this stuff. Let's go forward. So let's talk business. Okay, go one more, yeah. So I want to talk about this real quick. We're running out of time, but basically as a financial advisor, this is where we meet. Through leadership and vision, we define our direction, we set objectives, and we conquer challenges. That's the business owner. So if you come to me as a business owner, you need to have a goal, you need to have an objective, you need to know what you're doing, at least what you want to do, what you want to achieve. You have to have that vision. As a financial advisor, I'm here to help you, direct you to the proper way to finance that. Whether it's a loan, whether it's a line of credit, whether it's a credit card. I've had people come to me for all the same, or all different sorts of things. Let's move forward all the way to, let's just go forward. Let's keep going forward. So all this stuff here, actually go back one. All this stuff that I was going to talk about is basically how commercial underwriting kind of works and kind of how we do things. This is a loan package. If you want to get a loan, these are the things that we would need from you. This is the last 3 years of business and personal tax returns, year-to-date income statement, balance sheet, debt schedule for the business, personal financial statement, credit report. This is important for people who are getting a loan. Credit options, the underwriting is pretty much solely based on your credit score. So let's go forward. Let's go forward. Project charter. So this is how you come to me with something, and actually I can help you set up one of these. If you have a basic idea of what it is that you want to achieve, but you don't have a plan, I'm going to help you design a project charter. Project charters are defined by the triple constraint: scope of work, what we want to achieve, the time we want to achieve it in, and how much it's going to cost. We're going to package that up into one plan, and then I'm going to see if I can help you get it financed. Let's move forward. What's the right capital for you? Who's your banker? What's their specialty? Let's move forward. So who's your banker and what's their specialty? I have a banker here in Santa Cruz where I'm from. And basically, if somebody has a pretty much stable business and they move over to his bank, he's going to work with them and help them get an operating line of credit. We're going to take a look at the business, what their capability is, but it's basically there. And he basically told me he's really interested in getting people like $50,000 line. Now this is for the local area to me, which is Santa Cruz. They don't lend beyond that. Santa Cruz County Bank, they're local bank. But depending on who your banker is, they might have certain things that they do too, just like this guy who's into credit lines. And so different capital is more accessible than others. So, you might be looking for a 7A loan. You might be looking for an SBA 504. You might decide that if you're trying to finance a building, you might see that SBA loans have all sorts of crazy requirements and like all this legality and bureaucracy that makes it super challenging. So you might just go with a conventional real estate loan. Again, we might do an operating line of credit. And there's certain times where that makes more sense than a loan, and there's certain times where loans make more sense than an operating line of credit. If you're a startup, we're probably going to be leveraging your personal assets. So we're going to be looking at a home equity line or a cash out refinance. That makes a lot of people nervous. Again, we're going to look at the project charter and how confident you are in carrying out that plan. Credit cards for micro businesses, again, this is something that one should really think about. It's a pretty good way to finance inventory if you have a pretty quick turnover. Again, remember, if you use it correctly, it's free financing, and it's something to keep in mind. We didn't really get to go into quite all the detail I wanted to today. That's fine. Maybe we can set up another one of these. But the big thing that I do on the day-to-day, besides all the disaster finance, is help business owners find the right source of capital for them, because there's all these different structures. Well, basically there's three. There's credit cards, loans, and lines. But when it comes to loans, there's all these different types of loans, and there's all these different ones that are for this or for that or whatever. And so it can be a little confusing and overwhelming. And that's really my job, what I do. And the benefit about working with somebody like me is that we're going to help you understand what's happening. So if you go to a bank on your own and you apply for a loan and you get denied, most likely they're not going to tell you why. And what I'm going to do is work with you from the very beginning, or somebody like me, another financial advisor through Pacific Community Ventures, or another one through Small Business Development Center. That's what we do. We're on your team. And so we collect all your information and we put a report together, and then we basically help sell you to the bank and make you a desirable borrower. And this is how we help you find capital. And we also know what lenders want with these various types of loans, so that matchmaking is pretty significant part of the process. With that said, I think we're done. If anybody wants, oh yeah, this is me. So if you want to reach out to me, this is my info. This is my contact stuff. If you want to reach out to the Finance Center, super good resource. We have an amazing team there. We have financial advisors, and we also have, I know there's one guy who's doing e-commerce stuff, and so he's like an expert in website content and communications and all that stuff, which is really important for e-commerce. So we have a pretty diverse group of people working, and yeah, so that's it. Thank you all for coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle, for spending the past hour with us. And thank you to everyone on the line for joining us and asking your questions. We hope this was helpful. If you have any questions for Kyle that we weren't able to get to, I'll share this slide with his contact information. If you'd like to start working with a financial advisor through Pacific Community Ventures, you can reach out to your relationship manager or myself. I've got our contact information that'll get sent out to you as well. And like I said at the start, if you have any suggested topics for our future AMAs, or if you're an advisor who would like to join us for an AMA, reach out as well. So thank you all so much. Thank you again, Kyle. This was awesome. I know we had a lot of questions answered and a lot of great information shared. So thank you again, and have a good day, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming.